Good morning. Welcome, everyone. My name is Louise Harris. I'm Dean of Graduate Studies for the College of Arts and Humanities at the University of Glasgow. I'm going to be chairing our panel discussion today. Before we get started with some questions, I'd just like the panel to introduce themselves. So I'm going to go around my screen clockwise, and get everyone to introduce themselves. So first of all, Angela.
Yeah, hi everyone, thanks. My name's Dr Angela Gayton and I'm a lecturer in applied linguistics and education. So I work in the School of Critical Studies here at the University of Glasgow, and I work predominantly in the field of language education, and my main areas of interest are things like multilingualism, language learning identity, and language learning motivation, and all of this set against the backdrop of internationalization of higher education. So in terms of my PhD supervision, I currently supervise students who are working on topics such as developing university language learners' feedback literacies, how university language learners collaborate with each other to develop their knowledge and understanding, and multimodal communication in the international and intercultural university classroom. So that's just a little bit about me. Thanks, Louise.
Wow, that was an amazing introduction. I feel like I did a terrible job of mine now, and I need to say more about me and who I am. So I will do that. So I am, in addition to being Dean of Graduate Studies, I'm also a professor of audiovisual composition based in music within the college. So if anyone, I'm a practice-based researcher, so if anyone has questions specifically about doing PhDs by practice, hopefully I can help to answer those as well. Okay, so I'm going to introduce our PGR panelists now. So first of all, Zian.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm a PhD student from also the School of Critical Studies, and my major is applied linguistics, and my research interest is around corpus linguistics and critical discourse analysis. And I'm working on the project on language and gender and identity and representation in media. So yeah, that's almost practically all about me. And I also did a master's degree also in the University of Glasgow in applied linguistics.
Great, thanks, Ian. Flavia?
Hi, I'm Flavia. I'm a PhD candidate in comparative literature at the School of Modern Languages and Cultures. I have just submitted my PhD thesis in September this year, so I'm right now waiting for Viva. Because I have gone through the whole process of doing a PhD, so I thought I'd be able to give a general overview of the program in comparative literature and also in arts in general. I'm happy to share with you all both my research interest and also all the activities I have done beside writing thesis itself. So feel free to ask me anything.
Great, thanks, Flavia. And finally, Samaya. Samaya, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Hi, I'm Sumaya Osmani, and I am doing my PhD in creative writing. I'm in my second year, and I'm self-funded. So that's a doctorate of fine arts in creative writing. And I am already a published author in nonfiction, in 3 nonfiction books, but I am working on my first fiction, which is part of my PhD. As it is a practice-based PhD, a creative piece of work is my thesis. So I am working on a novel about the legacies of partition and river politics in India and Pakistan. And I'm also looking at a sense of belonging and identity through that, and the concept of post-memory. So that's what I'm working on right now. And I have also done my master's in creative writing, the MLit in creative writing at the University of Glasgow.
Wonderful. Very many thanks to all of our panelists for being with us today. I know we're going to have some really interesting questions to answer and to talk through. But I think we're just going to start with a really general question, which I'd like to ask our PGR panelists, which is, why did you want to do a PhD in the first place? So what were your motivations and interests? Should we start with Samaya? You're already unmuted, so should we start with you?
Yeah, of course. I think that when I was doing my master's, this was my second master's, and I came back to university after 25 years. So it was interesting to return at a point where I did another master's, and that sort of fueled my interest in the topics I'd been thinking about for a really long time, whereas my writing was concerned. And it was quite a big change for me because I'd been writing so much nonfiction. And I think that when I started to think deeper about it, I knew that there were questions I really wanted to look into. And a PhD just felt really like a natural transition at that point, because I had given such a large gap between my education previously to going back to university and doing a master's again. I felt that I really was ready. My brain felt really ready to answer some questions, research some questions, felt like there was a real gap in the sort of writing market about certain themes that I was looking at. So I think that's what really inspired me. And I also felt like I had over the years been teaching, and I knew that I really enjoy the academic sort of lifestyle. I also enjoyed just being a part of academia. I really enjoyed that first year that I was doing my master's. And I thought, well, I think at this point I might want to do a PhD, because I do think that teaching is something I want to do in tandem with my writing. So that's really what inspired me to come back and stay for the PhD.
Amazing. Thanks, Samaya. Maybe Zian, can you answer that question for us?
Okay, sure. So I think, unlike Sumaya, I haven't done any independent work on myself, because I've always been learning in school. I did my PhD right after I finished my master's, and I think the idea of getting a PhD is through my master's learning, because I find that I like the idea of linguistics, and I think there's a interest of an area that I really want to look at, and I think that is an overlooked area, so that is my research interest, and I think that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I think getting a PhD is just a start of that area's researching. So I think that's my motivation of getting a PhD. So that inner motivation is really important for you to get a PhD, I think. And I think that's my personal idea of why do I want to do a PhD. And yeah, thank you.
Great, thanks. And Flavia?
Hi, thank you. For me, I did my master's degree in literary and comparative studies in Hong Kong. And after that, I didn't pursue academic career at first. I jumped into the field of script writing. I worked as a scriptwriter for 2 years, which this working experience actually enlightened a lot aspects of my PhD thesis. Because comparative literature is a discipline where interdisciplinary practice is very much encouraged nowadays. So I was re-looking at the texts and also the knowledge I received during my bachelor and master degree, and seeing them through creative lenses with the ability of script writing itself. And then I decided to deconstruct the scripts about those historical narratives in an academic way. So I kind of just was playing around with the same text from these different perspectives and methodologies. For that, I think PhD for me is kind of not only a practice I want to see how far I can push my ability to thrive, but also I want to bring something new into the field of comparative literature, which I have been doing for the past 4 years. And also my research interest is about reconstructing the Renaissance history on the small screen, which includes television shows and video games. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I mean, it's 20 years nearly since I started my own PhD, but similar to Flavia, I went into work immediately post-masters, and then, to be honest, just missed learning. Just had to go back and do more learning, and that's been the case ever since, hence why I'm still at university now, having never fully left. So we've got some questions starting to come in now, so I'll address some of these. First of all, is it possible for international students to receive this fund? So I'm assuming you were talking about the Doctoral Landscape Awards, which is the funding sort of scheme that we have live at the moment. It absolutely is. So we have 3 of those to award in total, and we can award 1 of them per year to an international student. So there is the possibility for that. Is it possible to do a PhD online? It is absolutely possible to do a PhD by distance, yeah, so you do not have to be physically based in Glasgow in order to study for a PhD. The majority of our programs are available at distance. I will say if you are funded, so if you were to secure one of the Doctoral Landscape Awards, you can't do that online. So that needs to be, you need to be physically based in or close to Glasgow in order to do that. And okay, so a slightly longer question here. Give some information about the proposal, how complete it should be, and whether it's possible to discuss it with supervisors before applying. It is absolutely possible to discuss it with supervisors before applying. And in fact, definitely do that. That's the first kind of stage in developing your proposal, should be reaching out to a supervisor, discussing it with them, sort of thinking through what it is that you're wanting to do with your supervisor. I don't know if any of our panelists have any kind of first-hand experience of that they want to offer in terms of developing their proposal with their supervisor. Anyone want to jump in there?
I can just support what you're saying, Louise. I think it's actually really important to think about what member of staff you want to contact and why. So when you're developing your initial ideas and you've got some, maybe, you know, quite a rough or vague idea of the topic that you would like to investigate, it's really important that you as the candidate take the responsibility to work out who would be the best supervisor for you. So just to give an example of what not to do, sometimes candidates might send around their proposal to every single member of staff in a department, and that suggests to us that's a little bit problematic, because that might suggest to us that maybe that particular candidate hasn't really thought carefully about who would be the best supervisor for them and why. So just to give an example from my subject area in English language and linguistics, there are, let's say, 15 members of staff in our department, and all of us have really different specialisms. So the sorts of things that I'm able to supervise because of my own expertise are completely different to my colleagues even in my department. So it's really important that you, as the candidate, do that little bit of research to think, oh yeah, they would be a suitable supervisor for me. So I just wanted to support what Louise was saying, because that is something that's really vital.
Brilliant, thanks Angela. So we've got a related question, which is, what if the professor you'd like to be a supervisor doesn't have capacity to supervise you, which absolutely does happen. If that is the case, the best thing to do is speak to the PGR convener in the subject area that you're applying to, because they will know who else in that subject area might have the capacity and the research expertise to be able to support you. So in the majority of our subjects within the college, there will be more than one person who is able to support and supervise you. And it's certainly possible that if the supervisor you're wanting to work with can't take you on as a principal supervisor, they could still be involved in an advisory capacity or as a second or third supervisor. So don't be too disheartened by that if that does happen. But obviously, you know, as academics, we can only take on a certain number of PhD students, and at times we are just over capacity. So if that does happen, definitely reach out to the PGR convener in your subject area. They should be able to help. Okay, I would like to know more about the intricacies of a research proposal, specifically in the discipline of literature. Well, I am not a literature specialist, but I can tell you about the research proposal and the intricacies of that. The main thing with the research proposal is making sure that it is clear, it is concise. You have a relatively short word limit. Whether you're applying for funding or not, we'd like you to keep your research proposal to roughly 1,000 words. So it's not a lot of words. What we need to know is what it is that you're wanting to do. So what's your research question? How are you going to go about testing and researching that research question? And what is the area, what is the kind of key contribution that you're going to make to knowledge? This is the big thing about doing a PhD, is what are you contributing to the knowledge in your field? And when you come to doing your Viva all the way at the end of your PhD, which Flavia is anticipating and waiting for at the moment, that's the thing that you're really going to be asked about, is how is what you have done, how is your research contributing to knowledge in your field? So your research proposal needs to show that you know about the stuff around your field. It needs to show that you are aware of the context and the kind of broader field surrounding what it is that you're wanting to do, that you are able to contribute to that field, and that you've really carefully thought through what it is that you're wanting to do in what, although 3 full-time years or 5 part-time years feels like a long period of time, it's actually not. So PhD needs to be really super focused and detailed in the specific area that you're interested in. Does anyone else want to come in on this question? So, or specifically around the discipline of literature?
Just again, a little thing to support what you're saying, Louise. Just keep in mind that research proposals might have very different specifications in our different disciplines. So I can see a few different things that pertain for proposals that we would be looking for in English language and linguistics, for example. And what I would expect would be the case is that on each individual PhD program webpage for our university, there might be some specific guidelines, and it's really important just to have a read of those, look at any information that's available and adhere to those as you're writing your proposal. But I agree totally with Louise. I think the key thing is that sense of original contribution to knowledge and a critical thinking around that, I think, is what I'm looking for in proposals.
Great, thanks, Angela. So sort of another related question, what are the sorts of things increase your chances of securing funding for your PhD project, either through the Doctoral Landscape Award or other sources? Oh, that's a big question. So first of all, we're looking for the strength of your research proposal. So how well are you convincing us that this is a piece of research that really needs to be done? That can be in terms of how well you explain your research question, how well you explain how you're going to research that question. Apologies. We are also looking for things like timeliness. Why is it important that this research is done now? Why couldn't it wait another 10 years or another 20 years? Why is it not too late to be doing this research? So how does this feed into the kind of current context in your field? In terms of securing funding for the Doctoral Landscape Awards, in fairness, for any scholarship, you need to be thinking about knowledge exchange and impact. So how are you going to share your research with the wider community, both within your subject area and more broadly? You need to be thinking about your training needs. So how are you going to develop as a person when you are putting together your research? How are you going to strengthen your skills and enhance your skills? And we're also looking for supervisory fit. So how well does what you're doing align with what your supervisors are doing? How well are they able to support you and to support the project that you're doing? So does your research fit well with them? That's another thing that we're looking for. And since the deadline for funding is pretty soon, should be submitted by the 12th of December. I believe actually the deadline for the DLAs is 28th of November, so it's even sooner than that. Is it mandatory to have a potential supervisor on board? Yes, it is, because the supervisor needs to submit a supervisory statement of support. So if you don't have a supervisor on board, they can't do that. So certainly for the Doctoral Landscape Awards, you do absolutely need to have a supervisor on board. You don't necessarily need one in order to apply, but if you apply without a supervisor, your application gets bounced back to subject level for them to try and find you a supervisor. So you're much better having one on board before you apply than doing that at a later date, if that makes sense. What are the things to be careful about when applying for a Doctoral Landscape Award? I'm not sure I fully understand that question, things to be careful about. So maybe whoever asked that question, if you can restate that for me and be a little bit more specific about what you're asking there. I've sent emails before to potential supervisors, but I've never received a response back. What am I doing wrong? I don't think you're doing anything wrong there. That is on the potential supervisor to get back to you to let you know that if they are not available, that you should be contacting someone else. What you should do is find out who the PGR convener in your subject area or even your school is, and they should be able to redirect your inquiry to someone appropriate. So apologies if you've not heard back, that's not great. Your subject or your school should be able to help you get a response. Is it possible to do a joint interdisciplinary PhD with a different faculty, for example, literature and anthropology, and how do you approach that? It's certainly possible to do a joint PhD within the college. That's relatively straightforward. To do a cross-college PhD is a little bit more complicated. So it really depends what kind of thing you're wanting to do and how you're anticipating that happening. But it's not out of the realms of possibility. It just requires a little bit of thinking through. So you just need to talk about that with your prospective supervisor. Okay. Is it possible to apply for a TA position? So teaching assistant, yeah, graduate teaching assistantships are absolutely possible. Our PGRs who are with us, have any of you worked as GTAs and want to share a bit of your experience? Samaya, go ahead. Well, you all have, amazing. Everyone tell us about your experience.
Yeah, so in the second year, I've been able to apply for my GTA positions, and so I am this semester teaching comparative literature, and next semester teaching English literature, and I'm finding it really interesting. And I applied for it through the Student Opportunity Hub, and it was a relatively straightforward sort of way to go. There was nothing really that complicated, but the interviews were really good, and I really enjoyed the interview process. process, because I think that they really listened to what you had to say and how you would be approaching your teaching. And also the training's been great as well, just to get you ready for how to teach. And this week I did some training for marking. That was really good. So I'll be marking my first bunch of assignments from the students. And I'm really enjoying it. It's really wonderful. I've also had the opportunity to assist a tutor in the master's program because of my background as a published author. So I'm doing one module in that. That's been really interesting as well. So I've been fortunate enough to have a little bit of master's teaching experience as well. I really enjoyed it because I think what it does is it really, I think, gives you the opportunity to see whether teaching is for you. And I think that is a fundamental thing. And so if it isn't for you, then you can sort of, by the end of your third year, maybe write it off as a future career, or maybe take it up. So I think that's been really great. And I think in my first couple of months, I really think this is for me. Let's hope it stays that way. But for now, I really am enjoying it.
Amazing. Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button there. Zien or Flavia, do you want to share your experiences with GTAs?
Yeah, of course. So I'm currently working as a graduate teaching assistant this semester for a level 1 course of English language and linguistics. So I think, first of all, to begin with, interviews is really helpful. It gets you thinking about why do you want to take an position as a teaching assistant, and what would you do if you got the job? What would you deliver if you are the teacher? And I think that is really helpful. And besides that, there are trainings for GTA, so that is really helpful. And we learn about how to deal with the teaching atmosphere in the classroom and how to deal with teaching materials and students. And besides that, I think it gives you an idea of how teaching would be like, because when you finish your PhD, teaching might be an option for you, and that's where you get the sense of how teaching would be like. And I think that's really helpful.
Great, thanks.
I'd like to share my experience working in both School of Creative Arts and Industries, also with School of Modern Languages and Cultures. I was doing GTA for 2 years, from 2023 to 2025, till the end of this summer, in 2 schools. I would say doing GTA really transformed my understanding of being a PhD student, because this is the first stepping stone for you to become an academic. You will be assigned to work with a mentor in the school who will be training you and also providing you feedback with your work. Even though you are providing feedback to your student, you are being supervised in this sense as well. So this is position where I think will educate you not just being a student while you are doing your PhD, but also you are a trained academic who has to contribute to the student community. And for me, the teaching experience was a very interesting experience, because you get to work, you get to talk to different students who has a very diversified background, even though they're all joining in the same course of yours. But you can see how students are communicating through their own trained academic backgrounds, and you get to learn from the students. I have to say, sometimes I also always get fascinated by the ideas my students provide me. And also the marking session is where I was commented by my supervisor that my own academic writing improved a lot after I marked a lot of students' essays. You just gradually, naturally learn how to write a good academic essay. So I would say it's a very inspiring and educational process to be a GTA.
Amazing. Thanks, Flavia. Okay, what things should we do first? Can we first send a proposal to our supervisor and then apply? So it's definitely a good idea to have a proposal at least partly fleshed out before you get in touch with the supervisor, but you will need to have a fully fleshed out proposal by the time you get to actually applying. But discussing that as it develops with a prospective supervisor is the best way of ensuring that that's the strongest proposal it can be. I'm going to throw this one to Angela just so I don't do all the talking, because I'm sure everyone is already sick of hearing my voice. So Angela, what should we look for when looking for a supervisor?
Yeah, thanks, Louise. I saw that question in the chat, and I think that's a really interesting one. So I think first and foremost, the really key thing is an alignment between your interests as a PhD student and the expertise of the supervisor. So I said a little bit about my own areas of interest at the beginning and also the sorts of things that I'm supervising. And I hope even from that very brief introduction, you could see that there was a really, really close connection there between the things that I myself, as a member of staff, as a researcher, the things I'm really interested in, and also the things that I have published in. I think that's really important. And what I am supporting my PhD students to do as well. There's a really, really close connection there. So I think what PhD candidates should be doing, potential PhD candidates should be doing, is having a really close look at people that they're interested in, that they think might be a good supervisor for them, and actually reading their academic publications, having a look at their own research trajectory to ensure, to get a sense that they have the right expertise to be able to support you. Because, you know, if there was a student who, to give you an example, Flavia has said a little bit about her work, and there is no way that I would be in a position to be able to supervise Flavia, because our research interests and the research traditions that we work in are just so very different. So you're looking for that close alignment. I think that's the key thing there. And also, as we have touched upon before as well, availability. So the PhD supervisor and student relationship is a really, really close working relationship. And that's why we can only take on relatively small numbers of PhD students at any one time. So yeah, it is often the case, unfortunately, that the person that you approach might not have the capacity. So as Louise has already said, I think a really good piece of advice is to go to the PGR, the Postgraduate Research Convener, in that particular subject area. So they might be able to advise whether there's someone else who does have capacity. So I think those are the key things to keep in mind.
Brilliant. Thanks, Angela. So, do I need to have published my works in order to be admitted for a PhD course? Absolutely not. Some people have. So Samaya, for example, is already a published author, and that's quite often the case with, not quite often the case, but it can be the case with students who are doing creative writing DFAs. Also, we get quite a lot of practice-based researchers who have had kind of professional careers prior to starting their PhD, but you do not, like, publication is not a prerequisite for undertaking a PhD. Many of you will publish during your PhD. Some of you won't publish at all until after your PhD. There's no requirement to sort of do it at any specific stage. So that's definitely not a requirement in order to be admitted for a PhD. Is it possible for our PhD to be an extension of our master's dissertation, or would that be considered plagiarism? It would be considered plagiarism if you directly took some of the writing from your master's and put it in your PhD thesis. That would be plagiarism. If you are building on the ideas you developed through your master's dissertation and enhancing those and developing those through a PhD, then that would not be considered plagiarism. So you can absolutely take that topic area and extend and develop it, and a lot of people do that, but you can't take work that you've already had assessed and submitted for an assessment and use that for another assessment. That would be plagiarism. Are doctoral landscape awards only available for new PhD applications, or can existing PhD students apply? So that it is only for new PhD applications. That is part of the terms of the new funding awards by the HRC. So many of you will know that the previous iteration of doctoral funding from the HRC, which was our doctoral training partnership grants, were eligible for students who had already started their PhD. That is no longer the case, unfortunately. So it's only if you are a new student now. Okay, this is a question specifically for Ziyin. So what did you study in your bachelor's? Because I'm interested in language cognition and linguistics and looking forward to studying linguistics in a master's and then proceed to a PhD. So Ziyin, can you share your specific background?
Yeah, definitely. So, personally speaking, I did my undergrad also in English language and linguistics, and also applied linguistics in my master's and applied linguistics in my PhD. So I think for me, this is consistency, but I think I've met a lot of classmates in my master's. They have came from different majors of their undergrads. For example, might be education, and sometimes there's business, and they want to use an applied linguistics master's degree to do some interdisciplinary work, and that would be great for them. And I think that the consistency is not a necessary requirement for you. I think if you don't have English language and linguistics as your major in your undergrad, it's fine. I think it's fine.
Great, thank you. Okay, so this next question is, how do I find a supervisor? So maybe I'm going to ask our PGR panelists, how did you go about finding a supervisor when you were in this position? What was your process?
Okay, I think I can share my experience. So because I did find a supervisor when I was in my master's study in our School of Critical Studies. And I think that is when I was taking a lesson from a professor, and I think his research interest is quite much alike with my research interest, which is language and identity, language and gender. And so I just talked to him when we were at the office hour, and I said to him that I wanted to do a PhD. What do you think? And initially he said he doesn't have the capacity, and he recommended other supervisors for me. But after a year of study, and I chose him as my supervisor for my dissertation, and I think we've talked a lot about my research interest. And I think so basically after I finished my dissertation, and he said, Zijing, you can write up a research proposal, and we will see how it looks like, and we will see would you be able to apply for a PhD, and would he be able to supervise me. So I think that's my trajectory, and I can only speak for myself because I only applied for the University of Glasgow. So that's for me, and I think other person would have more multiple experience.
Absolutely. So Samaya or Flavia, do you want to share? Oh, I can't hear you, Samaya, but I don't know if anyone else can. No. But it doesn't say that you're muted, so I don't know what's happening there.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Perfect.
I don't know what's going on. I just move things around. I was just saying that a very similar situation for me was that because I was there for my master's, and my supervisor was teaching the master's as well, and I started talking to him about my ideas, and he really, really liked them. And we hadn't discussed whether he'd be my supervisor yet, but while discussing the ideas, it was quite an organic growth of a relationship where he said, well, actually, I think that's really interesting. And I said, well, I am thinking about applying for the DFA, and I wonder whether you would be interested in being my supervisor, my primary supervisor. And then I looked for some others as well. And he jumped on it at once. It was one of some, he doesn't actually write similar. He's a poet. He writes my poetry, but he was very interested in my topics. And it was something that he enjoyed reading about and learning about. So he just was definitely interested in supervising me. And we've developed a really great relationship as a supervisor and supervisee since. And I really enjoy working with him. I do also have two other supervisors that I meet with occasionally that have different skill sets and are different sort of departments in Arts and Humanities. And I think that they complement my panel really well with my primary supervisor. So really, it was just about researching my topics, what I was really looking at, what were the sort of things that I could get from other people that they could support me in my research. So I thought that one from creative writing would definitely be very helpful, and one is sort of history and anthropology, and one is more from oral history. So I think that's really been very helpful to have these different sort of voices that can direct me to different opportunities, but also different literature that I should be reading.
Brilliant, thank you. Flavia.
I'll briefly share my experience. And same as Sumaya, I also have 3 supervisors. And when I first reached out to my primary supervisor, I was still working as a scriptwriter. And I didn't hear back for a long time. So for the students who just asked about receiving no response, I think it could be normal. For my case, it was until the summer of the 2021, before my program starts, my primary supervisor came back to me and she told me actually she has been looking for a partner to help supervise this project because my proposal was too interdisciplinary. So it doesn't fit directly within her expertise, even though there's overlapping. In the end, I end up with 3 supervisors from 3 different subjects. Also, same as Sumaya saying, this really provides a very rich perspective into the program, into your project. So that was my experience finding a supervisor. I would say do not be defeated by the waiting. There could be possibilities that your potential supervisor is trying to form up a team to help you with it.
Great, thanks very much, everyone. I would say also, just to add, if you haven't studied at the university before, so you don't know people already, you don't kind of have experience through doing a master's, all of the staff in the college have a staff profile on the university website, and that will detail their research interests. So you can simply have a look at who is going to be closely aligned to the thing that you're wanting to do. And as I mentioned earlier, you can also email the subject PGR convener in your subject area, and they'll have a really good idea if you give a brief description of what you're interested in doing. They'll have a really good idea of who might be able to supervise you in that area. So when finding a supervisor, do you need a full plan or can you just email with ideas? I would say you can email with ideas, but we like specificity. We like to know what it is that you're wanting to do. So it doesn't need to be a fully fleshed out 1,000-word research proposal at that stage, but we do want a pretty clear idea of what it is that you're wanting to do, not just kind of sketchy. So for example, I am a audiovisual composer. I have had people email me saying, I want to do a PhD in audiovisual composition. Can you supervise me? Okay, but what about audiovisual composition? Like, what kind of thing are you going to do? Like, just telling me the broader field doesn't really help. So you definitely do need not necessarily a full plan, but some pretty developed ideas at that stage. Do you have to have a master's to do a PhD? We do usually ask that you have a master's, yes. There are exceptions if you have a lot of professional experience, for example, so you can discuss that with a prospective supervisor. But under normal circumstances, yeah, we do ask for a master's. When you say the applications for the landscape are soon, is that for academic year 2026? Yes, it is. Sorry, Angela, please go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, Louise. I just wanted to add to that. I think the reason that it is the typical path that you would do a master's before your PhD is because there's a lot of really, really important learning that you do throughout your master's that actually lays the foundation for the PhD work. So I'm thinking about things such as research method training in your particular field of study. And also it's just about getting to know the field as well. And I think it's a really, really huge jump if you were to come straight from an undergraduate program to begin a PhD. As Louise says, maybe there are some, rarer cases where that does happen, but I think the master's is a really, really vital intermediary step. And I really can't think of any students in my own experience that haven't benefited from everything that they've gained from their masters that has then set them on the right path for doing the PhD. And I just wanted to say how important that is. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Angela. Sorry for not picking up on you sooner. So yes, applications for the Landscape Awards are for academic year 2026. So that would be starting in October 2026. Okay, which is the best time to apply for a PhD in literature at Glasgow in order to maximise the chances of being funded? Okay, so the best time to apply if you are wanting to apply for the Doctoral Landscape Awards is now. You need to do that before the end of the month. In terms of chances of being funded, there are other schemes that emerge at various points throughout the year. And they all have their own individual deadlines. So we have the China Scholarship Council, we have some Sanctuary PhD scholarships. There we go, the link has magically appeared on screen. So all of the current and future scholarships that we will have are on that scholarships page. So you need to be mindful of the deadlines for all of those, and that is what will maximise your chances of getting funding. Is there still time to email a supervisor, apply for a PhD and apply for a scholarship by the deadline? Probably just about, but it is tight. So the deadline is the end of this month. That's an awful lot of stuff to get done in that period of time. It's not out of the realms of possibilities if you've got quite developed ideas already, but I would say get your skates on if you are thinking about doing that. Okay, if you pivoted to a master's in a different subject and pivoted back to the field in which you completed your undergraduate degree, would this be a barrier for arts and humanities PhD applications? I don't think so. I would need to know a little bit more about the specifics. So what you went from and then to and then back again. I think the discipline of doing a master's, as Angela was saying, is one of the really key things. It doesn't necessarily matter that it was in a field that was a bit removed from where you're wanting to go back to. It's the discipline of doing the master's that is the really important thing. Would you agree with that, Angela?
Sorry. Yes, I think that's really vital. Yeah. So, you know, a sort of cognate related subject area could be useful, but I think I was talking before about that research methods training, and getting into that critical thinking mindset is absolutely what the master's trains you to do. So certainly as a prospective supervisor, I would be open to students who are applying who have done a master's in a slightly different field away from linguistics, but can demonstrate to me that what they've gained from that master's prepares them for the PhD in linguistics. So I don't think it needs to be a barrier. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think preparation is the really key word there. That's what we're looking for, is that you are correctly positioned to be able to do the PhD, and that can happen in all sorts of different ways. In our email to potential supervisors, should we indicate that we're in touch with other professors too, or should we not mention that? I mean, I don't really mind either way, to be honest. Angela, do you have any strong feelings? No.
I don't know. I mean, if there's rationale for mentioning it, then I think it's absolutely fine. And yeah, I mean, you might want to say that you're considering supervisors who have X, Y, Z expertise because of the way that aligns with your own ideas. I don't think it's a problem if you mention it, but maybe mention it because there's a reason to, if that makes sense. Like, don't just drop it in out of the blue. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Like, if we need to know that for a particular reason, then tell us. But if we don't, then don't. I'm not sure how helpful that is, but yeah. Okay, so do publications and job experience matter when it comes to applying for a PhD? If yes, how much would prove to be sufficient? I would say that very much depends on what it is that you're applying for. So I think if you have job experience that is really closely aligned to the thing that you're wanting to do, then that absolutely can be useful. Equally, there is no requirement to have a specific type of experience in work coming into a PhD. In terms of publications, if you have some, great, and they are relevant, fantastic, then that can definitely strengthen your application, but there is no sort of requirement for that to be in place in order to apply for a PhD. Angela, is there anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It's a really, really smart question to ask. And I think it to a degree is discipline specific. So I mentioned at the beginning that my area is language education. And what I do notice is that people who are applying to do a PhD with me, if they have quite a few years of professional experience, which is related to language education, so typically language teaching or something closely connected to that, what I see is that students who have that practical experience are better able to think about the sorts of questions that need to be researched. So Louise was talking earlier about conveying in your research proposal the timeliness of the research that you want to do. Why do we need to do it now? Why is it essential that we understand this? What is innovative about it? What is original about it? And I think in my field of language education, as I say, students who have that professional experience are so well placed to be able to answer those questions. So yeah, it's definitely a benefit. But as Louise says, there's no black and white expectation that students do have professional experience coming into a PhD. But I think it can often prove helpful.
Definitely. And again, it depends on the PhD. I mean, this is something that I find myself constantly saying to both my current and prospective PGRs, which is all PhDs are completely different and all PGRs are completely different. The knowledge and experience that you bring in, the way that you develop and manifest your research, they're all like, unlike any other type of qualification that you'll do, they're all so completely different and specific to the pathway. So yeah, there's no kind of correct profile that you should have coming into applying for a PhD. Okay, interesting question, this one, and I'll maybe talk to Samaya about this too, but what does a practice-based proposal look like? How is it different from a theory-based proposal? How can you explain in writing what you will do in another medium like a visual art or film? Okay, so I don't think it does look massively different. What a practice-based proposal can have is examples of practice attached to it. So you may be demonstrating to us what it is that you are doing in your practice. But fundamentally, we are still looking for a rigorous research question. We're still looking for evidence of being able to contribute to knowledge. It's just that the way that you are doing that is through practice as opposed to through extended critical writing. And many people who are doing practice-based research are also doing extended critical writing. So a lot of our PhDs by practice also involve very lengthy discussions of that practice in writing. So it doesn't look massively different. It still has research questions, ways that you will test those research questions, methodologies, you know, all of that kind of stuff, awareness of broader context, awareness of the field. It's not hugely different, really. It's just that the way that you do the research will be different. Samaya, how did you go about constructing your proposal?
Yes, thank you, Louise. So I basically knew my questions for quite a while. They had been brewing in my head for many years. And I think that my reading had been refining them over the year. And I really would reiterate that the master's really helped so close to it, because I had already done a master's, but that was in law many years ago. So it was quite interesting to come back and do creative writing. And initially I thought, well, you know, I don't have to do this because I already have my questions and I know I could straight go for a master's. But I think it really helped me look at things more critically, like you said. And I was able to spend that year really thinking about my questions a bit more critically. And so when I came to write my proposal, because it was practice-based, I knew the questions, but the form in which they were going to come out and the way I was going to explore them was going to be fiction. So it was quite interesting to look at how you transfer your questions into a form that is creative. But other than that, you're still working with the same questions, the same critical theory, the same sort of overarching idea of what you're researching, but you're just doing it in a different container. And I find that really interesting because obviously I think quite creatively, but then you're able to use your creative thinking in a very practical form to put your questions into that form. And I found that when I was writing my proposal, I started to think about how is my character going to take these questions forward, and how am I going to unpack the questions through the way that the narrative of my fiction will work. And so that for me was quite interesting. And that is what you basically have to do. So basically, even though you are writing a fiction, you're looking at it in a critical way. And perhaps if I was writing this fiction outside of a PhD, I wouldn't be looking at it that critically. I probably would be looking at themes and overarching ideas, but maybe not as critically. And I think that in the ways over the last coming on the second year now, which I am in second year, I think the last 1 year has really allowed me to take the way that I took those questions and put them into practice. And so in a way, I'm now writing the fiction. It's sort of slotted in because the last 1 year I've been reading so much, fiction and nonfiction, that I feel like my questions have created sub-questions that are now getting dealt with within the way that the narrative flows in the book. So that I think is the best way to say it. I suppose it would be similar in something like visual arts and film, or in art and fine arts. You would be taking all the ideas and the questions that you had and representing them in a creative form. I hope that helps, but that's how I've tried to do it in the last year anyway. I'm sure it'll evolve more this second year as well.
Great, amazing. That's a really good answer. Thank you. Okay, can I apply for more than one scholarship? I'm assuming you mean more than one funding scheme. You can, yes, if you are eligible for more than one. And I think when it comes to PhD funding, there is so little of it about that definitely apply for everything that you are eligible for. So do the two references have to be submitted by the deadline of the DLAs? Yes, they do. We need to have fully complete applications by the deadline for submission. Can you speak more on the DLA application? A lot of the focus has been on very early stages, but I'm much further along and looking for specifics on the funding application. Okay, I can, but you're going to need to tell me what specifics you need. So we have on the website for the scholarships, there are guidance notes for students. If there's something that we've not addressed in those guidance notes that you want me to specifically answer, then yes, I can answer that, but I can't really talk in general terms about the scholarships applications form at this point. What percentage of PhD candidates in arts and humanities are self-funded? I'm just not even sure if it's worth applying for funding, because I'm assuming arts and humanities doesn't offer a huge amount of funding. You are correct. Arts and humanities does not offer a huge amount of funding. I think it's worth saying across the board, there is very little funding for PhDs at all. That includes in social sciences, engineering, MBLS, etc. Like the amount of funding available for PhDs is just kind of going down and down and down. That is particularly acute in the arts and humanities. So yes, it is incredibly tight, incredibly competitive, and there are very few funding schemes available. The vast majority, I don't know what the percentage is, but the vast majority of our PhD students in the college are self-funding. By far the highest percentage are self-funding. It is absolutely possible to do a self-funded PhD. Samaya, I think you are self-funded. I was also self-funded 20 years ago. It is absolutely possible. It's incredibly hard work, I will say, but it is a thing that you absolutely can do. So if it is something that you are wanting to do and are dedicated to doing, then yes, you absolutely can do it. And it's by no means unusual. In fact, it's most common in our college. I'm conscious of time, so I'm just going to try and... Oh, no, Flavia, go ahead.
I just want to quickly jump in that I'm also self-funded. Most of the PhD students are the same situation, but I would say College of Arts has many small fundings for your research. For example, your travel trip support, and when you organize an event or workshop, all these fundings come from the university, even though they are limited as well and quite competitive. But I would say throughout my PhD, I have been really trying to get as much as these opportunities as possible. And also, like Zizin and Sumaya said, we're all doing GTAs, which also gain you some salary to support your daily life. Which is exhausting, I understand, but I would say it's good practice, and financially wise is a good practice too.
Great, thanks, Flavia. That's really helpful. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. No, jump in.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say, I also did a couple of internships, and that has really helped me as well. And not only has it helped me with a little bit of financial support, but also it's been really great making contacts outside of your own department. So I was working with research services and culture, and I've really, really enjoyed it, because I think that not only has it given me an idea of things that I can do outside of just being because if I didn't land up becoming a lecturer in the future, there are so many great things that you can do within a university. And that's something that this opportunity really gives you. It gives you a little bit of money, but it also opens your mind to other opportunities within academia. And I think that's an opportunity that you get. And perhaps you might not do that if you're funded, because obviously then you don't have to worry so much about making your ends meet. But if you do get an opportunity to do a internship, I think that really, really helps you think about other things and thinking outside of the box of future careers.
Great. Many thanks, both of you. That was really helpful. Do you need to be accepted onto the PhD program before you can be accepted for a funded place? Yes, is the answer. So we wouldn't offer you funding unless you had already been admitted onto a PhD. But the deadlines for both are at the same time for the Doctoral Landscape Awards. So you need to have submitted a PhD application and a funding application by the same deadline. Are creative practice-based research projects eligible for the same funding as traditional PhDs? They absolutely are, yeah. There aren't, as far as I'm aware, any scholarship schemes that specifically prohibit practice-based research as a mode of research. So yes, they are. Which months are PhD admission results usually announced? So you will get a decision on whether you have been admitted to a PhD throughout the year. Depends on when you apply, depends on when your application is assessed. So there is no kind of time of year when that happens. There is a time of year when we will announce funding decisions, and that is February next year. But there isn't a specific time at which you will find out whether you've been admitted to PhD. Okay, so Angela, go ahead.
Trying to support what Louise is saying, I think the important thing to say also is that could look very different from PhD program to PhD program. So for example, in our subject area, we have 4 deadlines across the academic year, and it just depends which of those deadlines you apply for. So for example, if you apply for the November deadline, you'll probably hear in December about whether your application has been successful or not. So again, I think it's just looking on the program webpage to see what the specifics are about what they mentioned for deadlines. Maybe it's open for the entire academic year.
Great, thanks, Angela. Okay, here's an interesting question. What, in your opinion, would be the advantage of getting an arts PhD from the University of Glasgow versus other universities? Okay, I'm going to open this up to the wider panel, but I'll say what I think about it first. I think what you are looking for with the PhD, obviously studying at the university is great. It's a great university, I think. I'm biased. I work there and teach there and supervise students there. But I do think it's a great university. I also think it's a fantastic city in which to be based. But for a PhD, what you need to be thinking about is your supervisor. So if there is a supervisor who is so closely aligned to your research interests, who is based at Glasgow, then go there. The supervisor relationship is the most important element of your research. So doing an arts PhD at Glasgow is a great thing, but doing an arts PhD with the person who is best suited to supervising your PhD, that's the really key thing, I think. So I don't think you can really compare other universities. You can compare other supervisors and think maybe this person would be a closer alignment, but I don't think, other than kind of reputation and all that kind of stuff, there is no sort of particular reason to do that here rather than somewhere else. It's really about the supervisor. But panelists, do you want to comment on that and either agree or disagree with me?
Well, yes, I think the shared research interest with you and your supervisor is the most important thing that you need to consider for applying a PhD. And personally speaking, I think the researching and teaching atmosphere in our School of Critical Studies is absolutely amazing. I think a lot of my friends in the school and we shared our experience of our supervisors and our teaching and learning experience. And I think people in the School of Critical Studies are really, really nice, and they are really nice supervisors. Yes, always offering their help when you have met your challenges, and if you have any technical questions, you can always count on your supervisors. And I think that's a really friendly relationship, and I think that's an advantage of the University of Glasgow.
Thanks. Anyone else want to come in on this question? Claudia.
Thank you. For me, I will speak on a more general perspective, is that Glasgow belongs to the Scottish Graduate School for Arts and Humanities, SAGSA. That was a great attraction for me when I was applying overseas, because my potential supervisor at the time recommended me a lot of opportunities and support they provide for arts and humanities researchers in Scotland in general. After I started my PhD, I did attend a lot of the research trainings and workshops, and even I started an exhibition myself for SAGSA. There were a lot of very diversified opportunities to get to know your peer colleagues, students all over Scotland, which is a very closed, a very friendly community for researchers. I think that is a very attractive point for me to study in not just Glasgow, but also in Scotland.
Great, thanks, Flavia. Okay, I am conscious of time, so I'm going to take this last question, which are, what are the different intakes offered for PhD applications at Glasgow? So we have 2 intakes across the year. The vast majority of PhD students start in October, and I'm assuming all 3 of our panelists here started in October. But we do also offer a January intake, so that is another option. If you aren't able to begin in October for whatever reason, you can certainly begin your studies in January. So we have 2 per year. Okay, I think that is us all wrapped up for today. So many thanks to you all for coming along. Many thanks for all your really interesting questions. But above all, many, many, many thanks to my fellow panelists who answered those questions incredibly well, I think, and much better than I would have done if it was just me by myself. And it was really great to have our 3 PGRs with us as well to share their direct experience of being PGRs at the University of Glasgow, because obviously myself and Angela only have kind of tangential experience of that. We have it alongside PGRs as opposed to actively being PGRs. So many thanks. And many thanks to you all for joining us today, and for your really insightful and interesting questions. Thanks very much.